The transport shuttle hummed as it descended through the thick clouds above the Academy planet. Zyra Kale pressed her forehead against the cool glass, watching the sprawling campus spread below. The buildings were tall, sleek, and polished, reflecting the light of the twin suns overhead. Ships and hover vehicles zipped through the skylanes, leaving trails of faint blue light behind. She had never seen anything like this, not on Voroth Prime, where life was a constant struggle against towering predators, crushing storms, and barren landscapes. Zyra's heart beat with a mix of excitement and caution. She had trained her entire life to survive on her homeworld, to endure what no ordinary human could. But this academy, it was a different kind of challenge. Not one of raw survival, but of skill, strategy, and reputation. She had heard whispers about cadets from Deathworlds before, stories told with a mix of awe and fear. Some said Deathworlders were too savage, too unpredictable for a structured academy. Others said they were the most capable of doing things no regular cadet could even imagine. Zyra didn't care which they believed. She only cared about one thing, proving herself, not to them, but to herself. The shuttle landed with a smooth thud, and the ramp descended. Zyra adjusted the straps of her pack and stepped out, her boots clicking sharply against the polished metal of the landing bay. Around her, cadets from dozens of planets were disembarking. She noticed the way some of them sized her up instantly, all athletic but compact, eyes sharp and alert, a stance that spoke of confidence without arrogance. They whispered to each other, their voices carrying curiosity and a hint of challenge. Zyra ignored them, her focus on the day ahead. She passed through the registration hall, a grand space lined with holographic banners displaying cadet achievements and academy mottos. Her eyes caught one of the banners. Strength is nothing without discipline. Intelligence is nothing without courage. She allowed herself a small smile. Discipline encouraged to things Voroth Prime had taught her better than anyone else. Strength, too, though it had a different meaning on her homeworld. Survival had been a dance with death, and she had learned every step. After checking in, she was directed to her first class. The lecture hall was vast, with rows of seats climbing up like an amphitheater. Cadets were already seated, some chatting quietly, others staring at holoscreens with tactical simulations running across them. Zyra scanned the room looking for an empty seat near the back. That was usually safest, less attention, less chance of interference. She had learned that on Voroth. Keep your head down until you were ready to act. As she settled into her seat, she felt eyes on her. Not one or two, but several. A group of cadets sitting a few rows ahead leaned forward, whispering among themselves, occasionally glancing back at her. Zyra didn't react. She knew the type. Confident, cocky, eager to test newcomers. Most wouldn't last long, especially if they underestimated her. The instructor entered the hall, a tall figure with cybernetic enhancements glinting under the lights. A hush fell over the room as he began the lecture. Zyra listened, not just to the words, but to the undercurrents, the cadets' reactions. The tension in the room, the unspoken challenges that hovered in the air. This academy was more than learning tactics and combat. It was learning how to survive among competitors. Just as she had survived on Voroth, the first hour passed without incident. But during the break, things changed. Zyra stepped into the corridor, stretching slightly, letting her senses scan the surroundings. That's when she felt the movement before she saw it, a subtle shift of energy. A quiet grouping of figures approaching from the side. For cadets, clearly older than her in academy rank, were closing in. Their expressions were easy to read, smirks, amusement, and a hint of arrogance. They thought they had the advantage. Double quotes, "Hey Deathworlder," one of them said, stepping forward. "Think you're tough enough to handle academy life?" His tone was mocking, meant to provoke. Zyra's lips curved slightly. Not a smile, but a calm acknowledgement. "I handle life fine," she said quietly. "Even the tough parts." The cadet laughed, nudging the others. "Let's see about that," he said. Before Zyra could respond further, they lunged. The attack was fast, but predictable. Her training on Voroth Prime had sharpened every sense. In an instant, she sidestepped, using their momentum against them. One cadet crashed into a wall, groaning as he slid down to the floor. Another swung at her with a metal baton, and she caught it mid-swing, twisting it with a practiced motion to send him stumbling backward. Two more moved in simultaneously. Zyra ducked low, sweeping her leg to knock one off balance while landing a controlled strike against the other. The movements were fluid, precise, almost artistic. Within 12 seconds, all 4 attackers were down. Other cadets froze, eyes wide in disbelief. Even the instructors, who had heard about Deathworlder's reputation, raised eyebrows. Zyra simply straightened her posture, adjusted her pack, and walked calmly toward the exit. No words, no celebration, just the quiet confidence of someone who had done what needed to be done. Later, sitting back in her seat for the next session, Zyra reflected on what had happened. On Vorath, such encounters were common, but in the Academy, it was different. She realized that survival here wasn't just about strength or reflexes. It was about perception, reputation, and strategy. Already, she could feel the subtle shift in how other cadets regarded her. Some would watch with curiosity now, some with caution, others, no doubt, with jealousy. But Zyra didn't mind. She was here for more than recognition. She was here to learn, adapt, and excel. To show that humanity, especially humans from Deathworlds, could thrive in any environment. The Academy, with its polished halls and sophisticated training modules, might have seemed like a world apart from Verath Prime. But the lessons were the same. Stay alert, trust your instincts, and never underestimate your own strength. As the final bell of the day rang, Zyra gathered her things and walked through the hallways, her presence impossible to ignore. Whispers followed her like a trail of static energy. She smiled faintly to herself, not for the attention, but for the silent knowledge that she had survived her first real test in the Academy, and she had done it with control, speed, and skill. Outside, the twin suns were beginning to set, casting long shadows across the campus. Zyra paused for a moment, letting the warmth of the light wash over her. This was a new world, a new challenge, but she felt ready. Verath Prime had forged her in fire and survival. Now, she would forge herself anew, not just as a cadet, but as a force to be reckoned with. And somewhere in the distance, the cadets she had defeated were muttering in the infirmary, no doubt planning their next move. Zyra knew that wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. Her eyes glinted with quiet determination. Whatever came next, she would meet it head-on. After all, a Deathworlder didn't just survive. They adapted, overcame, and thrived. And Zyra Kale was no exception. The infirmary's lights hummed quietly, reflecting off the white metallic walls as the 4 cadets groaned on the padded beds. Nurses moved between them, checking bruises and minor fractures. While their faces twisted with a mix of pain and humiliation, the story of Zyra Kale, the Deathworlder Cadet, had already begun to spread like wildfire throughout the Academy. They said she took all 4 of you down, in 12 seconds. One nurse asked, raising an eyebrow. "Not possible," muttered one cadet, wincing as he flexed his hand. "I mean, she's human, right?" "Yes," the nurse replied, scanning the monitors. "But Deathworld humans, they're different. You're faster, more dangerous. I've heard stories, but..." She trailed off, shaking her head. Meanwhile, back in the corridor outside, other cadets were gathering, whispering nervously. Zyra had returned to her dormitory, but the echo of her actions lingered. Eyes that had been indifferent now followed her every step, some with admiration, others with veiled hostility. In the mess hall later that day, Zyra moved quietly through the crowd, carrying her tray. Conversations paused as she walked past. Some cadets muttered under their breath, casting glances her way. Others simply stared in awe. Zyra ignored it, all placing her tray down and choosing a seat at the edge of the hall. She had learned long ago that attention was both a tool and a trap. "Deathworlder," a voice hissed from across the table. Zyra's eyes lifted slightly. 2 cadets, smaller but clearly hoping to test her indirectly, were whispering, their movements nervous. "Yes," Zyra said softly, her voice calm but carrying an edge that immediately silenced any thought of provocation. We saw what you did earlier," one cadet said, trying to sound casual. 12 seconds. That's insane. Are you, trained to fight that fast?" Zyra leaned back slightly, studying them carefully. "I grew up where survival wasn't optional. You adapt or you die. Here it's not that different, just rules are." Softer. She allowed herself a small smile, not mocking, just factual. The cadets looked at her, unsure whether to be impressed or intimidated. Zyra could sense it. They were recalibrating, trying to figure out how to approach her in the future. Later that evening, at Academy's command center buzzed with quiet urgency. Holoscreens displayed cadet performance reports, training schedules, and security alerts. One monitor blinked insistently, highlighting the incident was Zyra. Commander Vareth, seasoned officer with a mechanical arm, leaned forward in his chair. "A Deathworlder cadet sent for students to the infirmary in 12 seconds, he muttered, tapping his fingers. "This is unusual, even for a Deathworlder. Not a single major injury, but total incapacitation. She has precision, speed, and discipline." She didn't lose control. His assistant, a younger cadet officer, nodded. "Yes, sir." "And the report suggests minimal environmental advantage. She acted purely on skill." The other cadets, they underestimated her. Their planning was sloppy. Vareth rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "Keep a close eye on her. She's a potential asset, or a catalyst for conflict. Either way, we need to understand her abilities and her mindset." Back in the dorms, Zyra sat on her bed, her training manual open in front of her. Yet her mind wasn't on study, it was on observation. Every glance, every movement in the academy carried meaning. Even in a structured environment, she knew how subtle threats could arise. Being from Vorath Prime had taught her that every shadow, every whisper, could signal danger or opportunity. A knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. She opened it to find Cadet Lyra, a fellow human from a temperate colony. Lyra smiled faintly, clearly curious but not judgmental. "I heard about the incident," Lyra said cautiously. "You didn't hurt them badly, right?" Zyra shook her head. "No, I just stopped them. They needed a reminder not to assume I'm weak. That's all." Lyra nodded. "People here, they tend to misjudge things they don't understand, especially Deathworlders." Zyra allowed herself a small, genuine smile. Then maybe they'll learn something useful. The next morning, the academy hallways were quieter than usual. Word had spread, and even cadets who hadn't witnessed the fight knew the outcome. Teachers and instructors were watching with subtle scrutiny. Zyra walked through, noting every glance, every whispered comment. She realized that fear and respect often traveled together, something she had seen on Vorath countless times. During morning drills, the instructors organized a series of sparring exercises. Zyra was assigned a partner, a cadet named Rallic, known for his tactical thinking, but not raw strength. Zyra moved fluidly, adapting to his style, guiding him with subtle adjustments. It wasn't about showing dominance, it was about demonstrating skill. Other cadets watched, some impressed, some envious. Zyra's performance wasn't flashy, but it was efficient. Every movement had purpose, every strike calculated to maximize effect and minimize waste. She wasn't just strong, she was precise, fast, and observant. By midday, whispers had grown into conversations. "She's not just fast. She's thinking 3 steps ahead," one cadet said. "It's like she sees everything before it happens." "She's a Deathworlder," another replied. "They grow up in situations we can't even imagine. Survival is all they know. You can't train for what they're born into." Yes, Zyra overheard fragments of these discussions, but paid them little attention. The academy was a place to learn. Yes, but also a place to test boundaries. And she knew boundaries would be tested again, soon. During lunch, a group of the cadets she had defeated earlier glared at her from across the hall. They whispered, gesturing, clearly plotting something. Zyra noted it silently. She didn't panic, didn't prepare for a fight yet. Observation came first. By afternoon, the instructors had noticed the tension in the corridors. Commander Vareth appeared unexpectedly in the training halls, observing Zyra from a distance. He watched her calmly guide another cadet through a tactical exercise. There was control, patience, and discipline in her movements qualities that suggested she could lead, not just survive. Later, in a strategy lecture, the instructor introduced a complex scenario, a simulated boarding of a hostile spacecraft. Cadets had to coordinate, anticipate threats, and act as a team. Zyra's instincts from Vorith Prime made her stand out immediately. While others debated options, Zyra calculated probabilities, predicted enemy movements, and suggested maneuvers that none of the other cadets had considered. Her suggestions were met with silence at first, then nods of approval. Even the instructor raised an eyebrow. "That's unusually perceptive," he said. "You've thought several moves ahead. Very impressive." The other cadets exchanged glances. Some admired her intellect. Others were jealous. Yet Zyra didn't seek attention. She simply observed, learned, and contributed, blending instinct with logic. As the day ended, Zyra walked back to her dorm, carrying her training pack. The twin suns were dipping below the horizon, painting the sky with shades of orange and violet. She reflected on the events of the Datha confrontation, the whispers, the subtle shifts in the Academy's atmosphere. One thing was clear: she had made an impression. And impressions here could either open doors or close them. That night, in the quiet of her dorm, Zyra wrote in her personal log, "Academy is not Voroth, but the rules are the same. Observation, speed, strategy, control. People underestimate humans from death worlds. Will continue to do so. I will not stop them from learning. Tomorrow is another day, another test, and I will be ready." Far across the campus, in another dormitory, the cadets she had defeated seethed quietly. Plans were forming, subtle, careful, meant to challenge her without attracting instructor attention. They underestimated Zyra's ability to sense intent, to predict actions, and to adapt in moments. But that was the point. They hadn't learned. Yet that humans from death worlds survived because adaptation was instinct, not choice. Zyra slept that night in calm awareness, not arrogance. She was prepared for what would come: challenges, rivalries, and lessons. Her training, her instincts, and her discipline were tools honed to perfection. The Academy might have been built on order and rules, but Zyra knew one truth: in any system, the prepared survive, the clever thrive, and the underestimated become legends. And Zyra Kale intended to be exactly that. The morning sun rose over the Academy campus, casting long shadows across the polished walkways. Zyra Kale moved through the corridors with her usual calm focus, her senses alert but not tense. The events of the previous days had not gone unnoticed. Every glance, every whisper carried weight. And Zyra knew that wherever there was a tension, there was likely a challenge waiting. She could feel it before she even entered the training halls. Subtle movements. A shift in energy. Cadets from the group she had incapacitated earlier were watching her closely, their faces tight with controlled anger. They were clearly planning something. Zyra's mind cataloged their positions, the slight tension in their stances, the silent signals they exchanged. It was familiar. On Vorith Prime, every predator, every rival, every storm sent subtle signs. Reading them had saved her life countless times. The training hall was already buzzing with activity. Instructors called cadets to drills, sparring, and tactical exercises. Zyra's eyes scanned the room as she entered, noting not just the cadets, but the equipment, the layout, and the flow of movement. Every element was part of the equation. From across the room, she saw them, the 4 cadets who had attacked her before, joined now by 2 more who clearly thought additional numbers would give them an advantage. They were standing casually, but Zyra could see the tension behind the casualness. They had a plan, and they were counting on surprise and intimidation. One of them, a tall cadet with a sharp jaw and a proud posture, stepped forward. "Today's the day, Deathworlder," he said. "You won't be so lucky this time." Zyra's lips curved into a faint, controlled smile. "I'm ready," she replied simply. No hesitation, no provocation, just a calm acknowledgement. The instructor overseeing the session, a veteran named Commander Ulrich, raised an eyebrow at the exchange. "A sparring exercise," he said to the group. "Keep it under control. Observation counts as much as offense. Show technique, strategy, and discipline." The cadets nodded, but the underlying tension was clear. This was no ordinary sparring match. Zyra's opponents had hoped to catch her off guard, but she had already anticipated the attempt. Her strategy would be different. She wasn't here to dominate through force alone. She would turn their aggression into a lesson in skill and adaptation. The signal was given, and the group moved. Zyra waited a heartbeat, analyzing their movements. 2 approached from the left, swinging low, while the other 4 advanced from the right. Their attacks were predictable, based on force rather than strategy. Zyra shifted her weight slightly, sidestepping one swing, using another cadet's momentum to guide him past her. In moments, the first 2 were off balance, stumbling into soft mats with nothing broken, only their pride slightly bruised. The other 4 attacked together, attempting to overwhelm her. Zyra moved fluidly, weaving through their attacks with grace. She did not strike to injure. Instead, she redirected their energy, using precise footwork and subtle pushes to destabilize them. Within seconds, they were all off balance, grasping at air, scrambling to regain footing. The hall was silent, save for the instructor's voice guiding the exercise. "Observation, control, precision," Commander Ulrich called. "Remember, victory is not just brute force. Anticipate, adapt, respond." Zyra adjusted her stance, eyes scanning her opponents. One of them lunged aggressively, aiming a strike at her midsection. Zyra pivoted, using the cadet's momentum to spin him past her, guiding him gently but firmly into a mat. Another attacked with a sweep kick. She jumped lightly, landing behind him, and tapped his shoulder to signal him down. Maintaining control and minimizing impact, the remaining cadets hesitated, uncertainty flickering in their eyes. Zyra's movements were precise, controlled, and unexpectedly calm. She was not just reacting, she was predicting, anticipating, guiding. Her skill was evident, not in flashy attacks, but in how she neutralized threats without chaos. By the end of the exercise, all 6 cadets were on the mats, breathing heavily but uninjured. Zyra stood, adjusting her uniform, her expression calm and neutral. Commander Ulrich approached, nodding slowly. "Exceptional control," he said. "You managed multiple attackers, maintained discipline, and ensured no serious harm. This is the mark of a cadet who not only survives but leads." The cadets she had defeated earlier looked up at her, their eyes a mix of frustration, confusion, and respect. They hadn't expected her calm mastery, her ability to turn their numbers against them. Some of them began to understand that she wasn't just strong, she was adaptable, strategic, and unshakable. In the corridors afterward, the whispers were louder. "She's not just fast. She's thinking 3 moves ahead. How did she do that? She's different. Smarter than anyone else here?" Zyra walked calmly, listening without reacting. Praise or envy, it made no difference. What mattered was understanding the dynamics, knowing her environment, and preparing for the next challenge. On Vorath Prime, she had learned that the strongest predator was not the one who struck first, but the one who understood the environment and the intent of others. That afternoon, during a tactical theory session, Zyra's mind worked in a similar way. The instructor presented a scenario, a simulated planetary defense, where cadets had to coordinate and respond to unexpected threats. Zyra immediately noticed flaws in the initial plans proposed by her peers' routes that could be blocked. Supply chains vulnerable and response teams unbalanced. She raised her hand and calmly outlined adjustments. "If we position the defense units here," she said, pointing to the holographic map, "and maintain rapid response teams in these sectors, we can neutralize threats before they spread. Also, observation points along the ridges will give early warning, allowing us to adapt without overextending resources." The instructor looked at her with quiet approval. "Excellent analysis," he said. "You've accounted for speed, adaptation, and observation principles that many cadets overlook." Her classmates listened, some nodding in respect, others frowning with barely hidden jealousy. Zyra didn't speak to impress anyone. She spoke because she saw the solution clearly. On Vorith, hesitation or miscalculation could be fatal. Here, she applied the same instinct: anticipate, respond, and maintain control. After class, Zira returned to her dormitory. She opened her pack and began reviewing combat sequences, running simulations in her mind. Her training on Varath Prime had been relentless, and even here, she knew that continuous improvement was essential. Every encounter, every exercise, every observation was an opportunity to sharpen skill and perception. Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock. She opened the door to find Lyra standing there, concern in her eyes. "Zyra, they're still talking about what happened," she said. "Some of the cadets are planning something. They won't leave it alone." Zyra nodded slowly. "I expected as much," she replied. "Retaliation is inevitable, but it will only teach them a lesson if they challenge me directly. Otherwise, they waste their energy and reveal nothing." Lyra hesitated. "Are you sure?" "They might try to overwhelm you more than before." Zyra smiled faintly. "Let them. I'm ready." That evening, the academy training grounds were quiet, bathed in the soft glow of artificial lighting. Zyra moved through drills alone, practicing sequences, testing speed, and reinforcing control. Her movements were precise, almost fluid, each action calculated for maximum efficiency. It wasn't showmanship. It was preparation, anticipation, and discipline. Across the grounds, the cadets who had been plotting earlier watched from a distance. They whispered, planning strategies, but Zyra's awareness was sharp. She noticed every gesture, every glance, every subtle signal. They assumed they could coordinate a surprise attack. She knew better. In her mind, she ran through potential scenarios, flanking maneuvers, combined attacks, feints, and diversions. For every possible tactic, she had a response. Adaptation wasn't just instincted, was preparation meeting opportunity. On Varath Prime, she had survived against packs of predators and rival clans by anticipating every move. Here the principle was the same. Night fell, and Zyra returned to her dormitory. She reviewed the day in her log. Today confirmed something predictable. Fear and respect travel together. Retaliation is coming, but I am ready. Observation, anticipation, adaptation, these are constants. I will meet their challenges with precision, not rage. I am not here to fight recklessly. I am here to learn, adapt, and excel. And if anyone underestimates a Deathworlder, they will understand the cost. Far across the campus, in a dimly lit dormitory, the cadets she had defeated earlier whispered among themselves. Plans were forming, cautious and calculated. They underestimated Zyra's ability to predict their moves, to sense intent, and to adapt instantaneously. But they would soon learn. A human from a death world survived. Because instinct and discipline were inseparable. As Zyra slept that night, she felt the quiet satisfaction of someone prepared. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new tests, and perhaps direct confrontation. She did not fear it. She embraced it. Every day was an opportunity to refine skill, strengthen perception, and prove that humans, even a single cadet from a death world, could thrive anywhere, and Zyra Kale would not just survive. She would excel, adapt, and lead. The next morning, the academy grounds were alive with energy. Cadets moved in synchronized drills. Hover bikes zipped through the air lanes, and holographic targets flickered in the training fields. Zyra Kale walked calmly among them, her eyes scanning everything the layout. The cadets' stances, subtle shifts in attention, and even small gestures that could hint at a plan. She felt the tension in the air before she even reached the sparring hall. Today would be different. The 4 cadets she had faced before, joined by 3 more who were eager to assert themselves, stood near the hall entrance. Their posture was deliberate, confident, yet there was a faint tremor of apprehension in their movements. They had clearly spent the night plotting, hoping to coordinate a full-scale challenge that would overwhelm her. Zyra did not flinch. She had anticipated this. Commander Ulrich, who was supervising the session, noticed the subtle tension. Today's exercise, he said, will test coordination, adaptability, and control. Observe, react, and maintain discipline. No unnecessary force. Remember, preparation is as important as execution. His eyes flicked briefly to Zyra, noting her calm demeanor. The group approached her, feigning casual conversation. "Hey, Deathworlder," one said. "We thought we'd see if you've really got what it takes. Think you can handle all of us together?" Zyra's eyes flicked over them, analyzing spacing, positioning, and energy. "I'll handle what comes," she replied, her tone neutral. She did not need to taunt. Her confidence alone communicated the warning. The first signal was subtle, a slight nod. From the tallest cadet and the attack began. The 7 cadets moved together, coordinating swings, sweeps, and feints. Their goal was clear: surround, overwhelm, and intimidate. But Zyra had already anticipated their strategy. Every movement was countered with precision and timing. She shifted her weight, guided attacks past her, and redirected energy. One lunged from the left, swinging a baton. Zyra sidestepped, using his momentum to slide him past a training dummy. Another tried a low sweep kick. Zyra jumped lightly, spinning behind him, placing a hand on his shoulder to redirect him onto a soft mat. 2 more attempted simultaneous attacks, thinking their numbers would suffice. Zyra's reflexes and strategy allowed her to parry both, guiding each toward a neutral position without striking harmfully. The remaining cadets hesitated, their confidence faltering as they realized their plan was not working. Zyra's calm, controlled, and strategic movements were frustrating to them. She was not just fast or strong, she was precise, thinking steps ahead, predicting their actions as if she could see them before they moved. Commander Ulrich watched closely, noting her technique. "Observation, control, adaptation," he murmured. "A cadet who understands the flow of battle rather than the battle itself." He shook his head in approval. By the middle of the exercise, the cadets attempting to overwhelm her were in disarray. Some stumbled into each other, some paused to reassess, and one even tried to retreat. Zyra took no aggressive advantage, but maintained control, subtly guiding them toward safe positions on the mats, neutralizing threats without causing harm. Her skill lay not in brute force, but in turning aggression into teachable moments. One cadet, desperate, tried a rapid approach with a double attack. Zyra moved with flawless timing, deflecting the first while redirecting the second's momentum. The cadet tripped slightly, regaining balance, but now clearly aware of Zyra's mastery. She did not gloat. Her calm presence alone was the lesson they had underestimated her, and now they were learning that underestimation came at a cost. The hall was silent, filled only with the soft thuds of controlled movements and the occasional grunt from exertion. Zyra's focus never wavered. She observed, adapted, and responded with precision. By the end of the exercise, all 7 cadets were neutralized and harmed. But clearly aware of the gap between their skill and hers, Commander Ulrich approached Zyra, nodding with approval. Exceptional control, precision, and tactical thinking. You did not just defend yourself, you neutralized a coordinated attack with minimal effort and no unnecessary damage. That is the mark of a cadet who is not just strong, but a leader in the making. The other cadets, breathing heavily, looked at her with a mixture of awe and reluctant respect. Zyra remained calm, knowing that respect earned through skill and discipline was far stronger than fear alone. Later that day, as Zyra moved through the academy halls, whispers followed her. "She's faster than anyone here. She thinks 3 moves ahead. She's different." Zyra ignored the chatter. She had learned long ago that distraction could be dangerous. Observation and focus were far more valuable than attention or applause. In her dormitory, Zyra reviewed the day's events in her personal log. "They attempted to overwhelm me. They coordinated, strategized, and expected numbers to be enough. But preparation, observation, and control outweigh sheer aggression. Today confirms something I already knew. Humans from Deathworld survive because we adapt instinctively. Retaliation is predictable, and preparation makes it manageable. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, I am ready." That evening, Commander Vareth contacted her privately. "Zyra Kale, your performance today is remarkable. You have demonstrated skill, precision, and discipline beyond your rank. However, I must warn you, your reputation is growing. Some cadets will see you as a threat. Others will see you as an example. Both can create tension. Remain aware." Zyra nodded. "Understood, sir. I will remain vigilant." As she returned to her room, Zyra could feel its subtle shifts in the Academy's atmosphere. Cadets who had previously ignored her now watched closely, trying to measure her abilities. Some with admiration, some with jealousy, and a few with fear. But Zyra had learned to see all three as opportunities to observe and adapt. The next morning brought a different type of challenge. An instructor had arranged a team exercise, pairing cadets randomly for a simulated planetary defense scenario. Zyra was paired with two cadets who had previously shown hostility toward her. They approached the exercise with skepticism, assuming she would dominate or undermine them. Zyra studied the scenario carefully, an enemy force attempting to breach. Multiple defense points. She immediately identified weak spots in their initial approach and proposed adjustments. "We need to maintain observation posts along the northern ridge," she explained. "Rapid response units here and here. If we spread too thin, the enemy will exploit the gaps. Coordinated defense and communication will neutralize threats efficiently." Her partners looked surprised, then slowly nodded. Zyra's approach was not about showing superiority, it was about ensuring success for the team. By the end of the exercise, the simulated enemy force had been contained, and the instructors were impressed. Cadets who had doubted her skill now realized that she combined instinct, intelligence, and leadership seamlessly. In the cafeteria later, conversations about Zyra's abilities had reached every corner of the hall. Cadets debated her speed, strategy, and discipline. Some were still jealous, but others were quietly inspired. Zyra moved through the room without a word, her calm demeanor leaving an impression far stronger than any boast could. That night, she sat by the window, overlooking the academy grounds bathed in the soft light of the twin moons. She reflected on the past few days, the fights, the observations, the lessons learned. Each challenge had been a test, not just of skill, but of patience, control, and adaptation. Zyra understood now that surviving in this environment required the same instincts that had kept her alive on Prime, perception, reflex, and strategy as she prepared for sleep. She reviewed her personal log again. Every challenge, every attack, every test is an opportunity. I did not just survive today, learned, adapted, improved capability. Humans from Deathworlds thrive because instinct meets discipline. I will continue to observe, refine, and prepare. Tomorrow is another day, and I will meet it with the same precision and control I have maintained so far. Across the campus, in the dormitories of her former aggressors, plans were quietly discussed. They underestimated Zyra once, twice, and now 3 times. Their frustration grew, but their strategy remained cautious. They had seen the consequences of reckless action. Zyra had taught them through skill and discipline that underestimating a Deathworlder came at a cost. And Zyra, Kale, lying in the quiet of her dormitory, smiled faintly. She did not seek conflict, but she was prepared for it. She understood that skill alone was not enough control. Observation and anticipation were equally vital. And she would continue to sharpen these traits, not for revenge, not for attention, but because they were the tools of survival and excellence. The academy was no longer just a place to learn. It was a proving ground, and Zyra Kale intended to master it fully. The academy's twin suns shone bright over the training grounds, their light reflecting off the polished surfaces of the towers and walkways. Zyra Kale walked through the campus with calm confidence, aware that her presence was noted by everyone around her. The events of the past week, the confrontation, the sparring exercises, the coordinated challenges, had not gone unnoticed. Her reputation had grown, and the reactions were mixed. Admiration, curiosity, and a quiet, begrudging respect. Instructors whispered among themselves. reviewing logs and reports of her performance. Commander Vareth had requested an audience with her later that day, and Zyra sensed the significance. She had anticipated recognition, but also knew that, with recognition, came responsibility. Humans from Deathworlds were respected for a reason. Their adaptability, resilience, and unmatched instinct. But respect required proof, not just rumor. Her morning began with a tactical simulation unlike any she had faced before. Cadets were divided into teams for a complex planetary defense exercise. Zyra's team included cadets who had previously challenged her, those who had underestimated her, and some who were neutral observers. She understood the dynamics immediately: tension, pride, and subtle rivalry. Each factor could affect performance. Remember, the instructor said? This simulation tests coordination, strategy, and adaptation. Observe your teammates, anticipate threats, and act as a unit. Control is as important as speed, Zyra nodded. Control. Adaptation. Observation. Words that had guided her since childhood on Voroth Prime. She took her position at the center of the field, scanning the holographic terrain. Enemy forces appeared on the display, moving strategically, simulating a sophisticated attack. Zyra's mind calculated paths, weaknesses, and optimal responses. The initial assault came from multiple directions. Zyra moved immediately, coordinating with her team, guiding them with subtle gestures, instructions, and signals. She anticipated enemy tactics, redirecting cadets to key positions, covering vulnerabilities, and neutralizing simulated threats efficiently. Her teammates followed her guidance, gradually trusting her judgment. Cadets who had previously doubted her began to notice the precision in her movements. She wasn't just fast or strong, she was strategic, able to predict outcomes and adapt in real time. Her leadership was calm, steady, and undeniable. The simulation concluded successfully, with minimal casualties and maximal efficiency. The instructor, observing closely, stepped forward. Exceptional execution, he said. Cadet Kale not only coordinated her team, but anticipated moves that others did not even consider. This is the mark of a cadet who leads through understanding, not intimidation. Whispers spread quickly through the ranks of cadets. Some were admiring, some jealous, but all were aware. Zyra Kale was no ordinary cadet. She had earned her reputation through skill, strategy, and discipline, not through arrogance or showmanship. Later in the academy courtyard, Zyra found a quiet moment to reflect. Her mind returned to Voroth Prime, to the endless survival challenges she had faced, to the predators, the storms, and the harsh landscapes. Those trials had prepared her for this environment. Here, the challenges were different, but the principles were the same: observation, adaptation, and resilience. Zyra understood that humans from Deathworlds thrived because they could adapt instinctively, a skill honed over lifetimes in hostile environments. Her reflection was interrupted by the approach of Cadet Lyra. Zyra, Lyra said softly, people are noticing. The instructors, the cadets, even the ones who challenged you before, are starting to respect you. You've changed the way they see humans from Deathworlds. Zyra smiled faintly. I didn't do it to be noticed, she replied. I did it to do my best. Respect will come if it is earned, not demanded. As the afternoon progressed, the Academy announced a formal assembly in the main hall. Cadets filed in, murmuring with excitement. Commander Vareth and several instructors stood at the front, observing the gathering. Zyra took a seat toward the front, alert but composed. Cadets, Vareth began. Recent events have highlighted the exceptional abilities of one of our own. Cadet Zyra Kale has demonstrated not only skill and speed, but intelligence, discipline, and leadership beyond her rank. Her actions have shown what a human from a Deathworld can achieve when instinct meets training. The room was silent for a moment, then filled with applause. Some clapped out of admiration, others out of respect, but the message was clear. Zyra Kale had earned recognition. She rose slightly in acknowledgement, keeping her posture calm and modest. She had not sought this praise, but she accepted it as a reflection of effort, skill, and dedication. Following the assembly, Vareth approached her personally. "Cadet Kale," he said, "you have set an example for others, not just in combat, but in discipline, strategy, and adaptation. We will be assigning you additional responsibilities and opportunities to train and mentor your peers. Your skills can guide others, as well as protect yourself." Zyra nodded, her mind already considering how she could help others improve while continuing her own training. "Thank you, sir. I will do my best." Word of Zyra's recognition spread quickly through the academy. Even cadets who had previously challenged her began to seek her advice and guidance. They realized that her skill was not a threat to intimidate, but a resource to learn from. Zyra approached these interactions with patience, guiding others in exercises, demonstrating tactics and offering insight into strategy. She became a bridge between reputation and mentorship, showing that humans from Deathworlds could be not only survivors but leaders. That evening, Zyra returned to her dormitory and reviewed her log. The academy is no longer unfamiliar. Cadets have observed skill and discipline. Respect is not given. It is earned through consistent action, observation, and adaptability. Humans from Deathworlds survive by instinct, but here, instinct combined with training can inspire others. Challenges will continue, but so will opportunities. I am ready for both. Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock. Lyra entered with a tray of supplies for their training exercises. "Tomorrow, we have new drills. But everyone is talking about you. Even the instructors, some, are considering advanced assignments for you." Zyra nodded. "Let them. Every challenge is an opportunity to improve, to guide, to learn. I will meet it as I always have, with focus, observation, and control." The following days saw Zyra taking on more responsibilities in the academy. She coordinated exercises, assisted instructors in observing simulations, and mentored cadets who sought her guidance. Her presence had become a subtle influence, shifting the academy's environment. Cadets who had once underestimated her now approached her with curiosity and respect. Her former aggressors no longer sought confrontation. They had learned, through experience, that underestimating a Deathworlder came at a cost. Zyra's influence was quiet but pervasive. She had not sought dominance. Only excellence in her actions spoke louder than words. One afternoon, during a free period, Zyra trained alone in the sparring hall. Her movements were precise and fluid, a dance of calculated motions and instinctive reflexes. She reflected on how far she had come from the harsh lands of Vorith Prime to this academy, where the stakes were different but the principles were the same: observation, adaptation, and resilience. Cadet Lyra entered quietly, observing Zyra's movements. "You're inspiring," she said softly, "not just because of your skill, but because of how you approach challenges. Calm, focused, never reckless." Zyra paused, considering the words. Instinct without control is dangerous. Discipline without observation is ineffective. Humans from Deathworlds learn to combine both. That's what allows us to thrive. By the end of the week, Zyra had solidified her position not through fear, but through skill, leadership, and respect. She had shown that humans of End from the most hostile environments could not only survive, but thrive, lead, and inspire. Her journey at the academy was just beginning. Challenges would continue, new cadets would arrive, and rivalries would emerge. But Zyra Kale had proven one enduring truth: underestimated humans from Deathworlds could overcome, adapt, and excel in any environment. As night fell over the academy, Zyra stood on the balcony of her dormitory, looking out at the vast campus below. The twin moons cast silvery light over the buildings and fields, reflecting in her eyes. She felt calm, confident, and ready. Tomorrow would bring new tests, new challenges, and new opportunities, and Zyra Kale would meet them all, because she was not just a survivor. She was a leader, a strategist, and a human from a death world, and nothing could stop her from thriving.